Lawyer Virginia Suarez also said Pemberton's attempt to apologize seemed orchestrated.
Never thought of apologizing to the family. It only shows it's all the dictates of the lawyer. It's all the thinking of the lawyer, but not coming voluntarily from Pemberton. So I don't see any sincerity in the apology.
Pemberton's lawyer, on the other hand, shot back at Suarez for branding her unethical for talking directly to the Laude family regarding payment for civil damages. According to attorney Rowena Flores, Jennifer Laude's mother contacted her back in 2017 expressing doubts about Suarez.
As early as 2017, gusto po akong makausap ni Mrs. Laude na solo, hindi po kasama yung mga lawyers niya dahil duda raw po siya sa mga lawyers niya. Nalaman niya na lang, siningil na lang siya ng kanyang mga lawyer nung pong patapos na yung kaso. Nagulat raw sila at hindi ang gano'n ang kanilang usapan.
For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
Health officials are clarifying President Duterte's statement on plans to procure the cheapest vaccine. They say the country will not simply buy COVID-19 vaccines for affordability, but most importantly for safety and efficacy. The department also expressed support to prohibit some home quarantine regimes, even for asymptomatic and mild COVID-19 patients. Greg Gregorio tells us more.
President Duterte earlier said this week that the government will be procuring the cheapest COVID-19 vaccine for Filipinos. But the Health Department immediately clarifies that while price is a factor, safety and efficacy of a particular vaccine is the top priority.
Gusto natin yung pinaka-best, no, for our population. That's why we are trying to negotiate with all of these manufacturers. Meron pa nga mga kinakausap na tayo na nasa preclinical phase pa lang, nakikipag-usap pa rin tayo. Dahil gusto nga natin ma-scope at makita natin kung ano talaga yung appropriate at pinaka-maayos na pwede nating ipagamit sa ating population.
Thus, aside from the ongoing negotiation with Gamaleya, the manufacturer of Russian-developed COVID-19 vaccine Sputnik V, vaccine experts from the Department of Science and Technology are also finalizing a confidentiality disclosure agreement with Sinovac and Sinopharm for their own vaccine candidates. The Health Department ensures that these vaccines have to be proven safe before the conduct of Phase 3 clinical trials in the country. It added that there is a separate strict procedure before it becomes available in the market. Meanwhile, the agency backs the call of the National Task Force Against COVID-19, discouraging home quarantine even for asymptomatic or mild cases of COVID-19.
This has been one of the factors that were identified kung bakit nagkakaroon tayo ng community transmission. That's why ito po yung proposal at recommendation ngayon ng ating National Task Force together with the ILG na mas preferred na ngayon ng gobyerno para mas makontain natin ang transmission para magkaroon na lang ng quarantine isolation or temporary treatment and monitoring facility, ilagay at i-isolate ang ating mga symptomatics at mga close contacts instead of doing home quarantine.
As of September 5, the number of COVID-19 clusters in the country has increased to 1,742. 84.9% or 1,480 of them are community clusters, while the rest were reported in hospitals and health facilities, jails and prisons, and other spaces like offices. In order to quickly detect and respond to COVID-19 cluster of cases, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said the current 1:4 to 10 average contact tracing rate must be ramped up. That's why they are mandating all testing laboratory to also submit the home address and contact information of every positive case.
So when you say it's a mandatory field, hindi makukumpleto po ang uploading ng isang DRU or disease reporting unit kapag hindi niya po nilagay lahat ng variables na kinakailangan.
In today's Laging Handa briefing, Tracing Czar and Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong reiterates the need for LGUs to reach the contact tracing benchmark of 1:37. Vergara told the public to expect high number of new COVID-19 cases in the coming days, but she said that some of them are late cases. The DOH also expressed optimism and hopes for the public continued cooperation as the rate of transmission in the country has dropped to less than 1%, and the utilization rate of isolation beds in temporary treatment and monitoring facilities is now at 41% or under moderate risk. As of today, the number of COVID-19 cases in the country stands at 245,143, with 55,614 of them are active. 3,986 patients died from the illness, while 185,543 recovered. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
The National Task Force Against COVID-19 is recommending the lockdown of cemeteries across the country for All Saints' Day amid the health crisis. This comes after Manila Mayor Isko Moreno closed all cemeteries in the cities from October 31 to November 3 to prevent the spread of the virus. NTF Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez Jr. commended Moreno's initiative and is now looking at implementing it in the entire country for All Saints' Day. Testing czar Vince Dizon also expressed support, saying they will consult other sectors, including LGUs, on the matter. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines is also agreeable with this move. In an interview with Agenda, CBCP Public Affairs Committee Secretary General Father Jerome Ceciliano said the public can just pray for the souls of their departed loved ones instead.
Ang advice lang po namin, kung magpapatupad man ng LGU ng ganyang polisiya, mag-alay na lang po ng misa sa mga simbahan. Yun po ang napakahalaga. Ipagdasal po yung mga namayapa, tapos punta sila sa opisina ng kanilang parokya, then offer masses for the departed.
In the face of calls for an academic freeze, the Education Department insists there is no stopping the opening of classes on October 5. The call for an academic freeze for the school year 2020 to 2021 trended on social media earlier this week. There is also an ongoing online petition for academic freeze that has now collected more than 230,000 signatures. But Education Secretary Leonor Briones says there are more people who support the opening of classes. 24.3 million students from kindergarten to senior high school are already enrolled for the coming school year.
Pag sabihin mo na may ilang daan na ayaw tayo magklase, ay mayroon naman tayong 24 million ka mga learners. And kung i-translate yan sa parents, about 48 million or maybe just under 50 million ka parents ang nagpapakita at nag-express na ng kanilang desire na talagang ipagpatuloy ang pag-aaral ng mga kabataan.
The Makabayan Bloc have filed a resolution seeking to investigate the controversial Manila Bay White Sand Project. House Resolution 1194 aims to conduct a House inquiry on the project's impact to the environment and public health, as well as utilization of public funds for the project amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The resolution was signed by representatives from Bayan Gabriela, ACT Teachers Party, and Kabataan Party List. Despite the project receiving backlash, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno continues to support the joint project of the DNR and DPWH. He says the Environment Department knows better.
Yung mga taga-Maynila, tingin ko nagpapasalamat kami. Hati niyan alam mo yun, beneficiaryo tayo di ba? Pero not to the expense, and we're very clear about it, not to the expense of the health issue of the our people. If it is harmful, it is harmful. Then we stop. Then we make people liable.
Defense Chief Delfin Lorenzana admits having given thumbs up to allow Dito Telecom's bid to construct cell sites within military camps despite concerns over national security. Lorenzana assured government deals with other Chinese firms will not be detrimental to the country. Has this story.
Despite strong opposition from various groups, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana admitted that he approved a deal allowing China-backed Dito Telecommunity to construct cell sites within the country's military camps. Lorenzana revealed this to House lawmakers who were reviewing the proposed 4.5 trillion peso budget for 2021, which includes some 283 billion peso allocation for the Defense Department.
I signed the contract recently because last year, when the contract reached my table, the Senate also asked a copy of the contract for them to scrutinize. They came out with nothing naman, wala silang complaint.
Lorenzana called the move fair since incumbent telco players Smart and Globe also have similar agreements with the AFP. But Cagayan de Oro Representative Rufus Rodriguez aired concerns over this deal, stressing that Dito Telecom of Davao businessman Dennis Uy is 40% owned by China.
Can you imagine that there will be Chinese allegedly employees of Dito who may be spies for China, where we have a conflict, especially on the West Philippine Sea, entering our camps?
Dito meanwhile assured the public that its structures will not be used to spy on the armed forces. The new telco player said it is working on ensuring proper telecommunication services for Filipinos. Dito said its commercial launch on March next year remains on track despite challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. During the hearing, Lorenzana was also asked about permitting U.S. blacklisted Chinese firms to operate in the Philippines. Lorenzana said these firms, including the one involved in Sangli Airport project, underwent fair bidding. He added that the government may have to pay a hefty amount for damages to these companies if the country does not honor contracts that are already signed. Despite this, the defense chief vowed to exercise due diligence in making sure government deals would not compromise national security. For News 5, Rio Fernandez, we are One News.
Good news for all Meralco customers. The company says it will for the month of September. This is the fifth consecutive day that Meralco has cut its electricity rate, which is now at 8 pesos and 42 centavos per kilowatt-hour after the utility company brought it down well over 6 centavos. This is equivalent to a 12 peso savings for households consuming up to 200 kilowatt-hours, 90 pesos for 35 kilowatt-hour consumers, and 25 to 31 pesos off the bills for consumptions of 400 and 500 kilowatt-hours respectively. Meralco says it continues to invoke the force majeure provision in some of its power supply agreements due to lower demand across its service areas, which are still under quarantine protocols. More stories when we return after a short break. Please stay with us. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. In today's hearing on DBM's proposed 4.5 trillion peso spending plan for 2021, some senators questioned the decrease in the proposed budget for the Department of Health, considering that the country is still battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Menos Baños has the details.
The Budget Department is asking for a 4.5 trillion peso national budget for next year. In the top 10 list of agencies that will get the biggest chunks of funding, the Department of Health ranks 5th. The Education Department tops the list, followed by the DPWH, DILG, and the Defense Department. With this, senators asked, why does it seem like the government isn't allocating as much as they have expected for the DOH, given the fact that it is the leading agency in the fight against ongoing pandemic?
Why it is that health is only 5th in the allocations for 2021. Tinitipid po ba natin ang ating health sector sa tulong at suporta?
In the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget, it is true that the government aims to boost the health sector to address the COVID-19 pandemic. However, may we also emphasize that we cannot rely on the budget of the DOH alone in order to reduce the impact of COVID-19 on the social and economic well-being of the country. Thus, we have also provided budgetary support for other agencies like DSWD, DOLE.
Initial budget allocation for the DOH this year was at 104 billion pesos, but due to the pandemic, its funds were increased to 153 billion pesos. However, for 2021, the DBM only allocated a proposed budget of 131 billion pesos for the Health Department.
I question, Mr. Chairman, the reduction of the DOH budget from the present 153 billion as adjusted versus 131 billion, which is in the present in the 2021 budget. As pointed out by Senator Villar, we need to improve our testing, we need to improve our contact tracing, and we need to improve our ability to treat. But how can we achieve these policies when you have reduced the DOH budget?
Budget Secretary Wendell Avisado explained that they already poured in a huge amount to the DOH this year so they could buy testing machines. And they expect that what will be left for expenditures next year are the testing kits and PPEs for healthcare workers. Senator Cynthia Villar meanwhile complained about the DOH not using their funds to build COVID-19 laboratories. Villar said only 30 out of 70 DOH-operated hospitals have COVID-19 labs, when in fact all these hospitals should each have one laboratory.
They have the budget, but they don't want to build.
Yeah.
Because during our DOH operated hospital, they did not build. We built that COVID lab. I built that COVID lab. They did not build it because they don't want to build it. So I want a commitment that they will build. Kasi pwedeng naandun ng pera pero ayaw nila gawin.
Yes.
You ask Senator Gatchalian, they don't have any COVID lab in Valenzuela, and he told me that he asked DOH to build, and sabi daw ng DOH, mag-donate ka. Di ba? Senator Gatchalian, you told me that.
Senator Risa Ontiveros meanwhile expressed worries about the funding for vaccines, which was pegged by DBM at 2.5 billion pesos. Avisado said the amount is good for 3.8 million poor families. But based on the calculation of Senator Ontiveros, the government would need at least 189 billion pesos to provide vaccines for 18 million poor families. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez said that Health Secretary Duque only asked for a 20 billion peso fund to procure vaccines, and he thinks they can find a source for this. But Senator Ontiveros insists 189 billion pesos should be the minimum budget for vaccine, and it seems like Secretary Duque is underestimating the budgetary need for vaccination. Meanwhile, Senator Franklin Drilon took notice of the 16 billion fund allocated by the DBM for the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict, while other agencies like DOLE only gets 15.9 billion and the Department of Tourism will only receive 3.5 billion pesos. Drilon questioned whether communist insurgency will be a big bigger threat next year compared to unemployment rate and shutdown of tourism industry. Avisado explained that the allocation will not go directly to the task force but will be downloaded to the LGUs. He explained that the budget will be used for barangays cleared of insurgency so they can start their lives over with livelihood programs and all their other needs so they won't be tempted to go back to insurgency. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
The Department of Science and Technology told House lawmakers today that the Budget Department slashed their proposed 36.2 billion peso proposed 2021 budget to around 23.8 billion pesos. This is still higher than the DOST's current budget of 20.5 billion pesos. But DBM's proposed spending plan for next year was still forced DOST to set aside some of its projects, including those related to COVID-19. DOST Assistant Secretary Maridon Sahagun said among the affected projects, a proposed virology institute, which capital outlay is not included in DBM's proposed spending plan. Because of this, lawmakers are pushing to augment appropriation for the DOST, but the DBM said the funds for the agency's COVID research may be pulled from its grants in aid allocation. DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña also came to DBM's defense.
Based on information that we have received, while the capital infrastructure of the proposed Virology Science and Technology Institute of the Philippines has not been included in our budget, I think it has been included in the National Capital Infrastructure Program.
Despite its scrap project, the DOST continues to be on top of forthcoming clinical trials for anti-COVID vaccines. De la Peña allayed fears of potential health risks that this might impose on Filipino volunteers. He said trials will not move forward without the go signal of human ethics boards across the country.
Una po tayo ay merong Philippine Health Research Ethics Board. Okay? At yan po ay merong national at sa iba't ibang rehiyon meron din tayong health research, meron din tayong research ethics board at meron din tayong mga research ethics board sa mga universidad na nagsasagawa ng mga research, lalo na yung involving humans. So, hindi po pwedeng magsimula ang clinical trials kung walang approval ng health ng Research Ethics Board.
And here are the other big stories today. The Supreme Court has junked Attorney Larry Gadon's petition to nullify the 33-year-old law renaming the Manila International Airport to the IA or Ninoy Aquino International Airport. The High Court spokesman, Attorney Brian Hosaka, said magistrates unanimously voted to dismiss the petition during the Supreme Court's en banc session yesterday due to lack of merit. In the petition filed late August, Gadon said former Senator Ninoy Aquino is not considered a hero and must not have any airport named after him. Gadon cited guidelines from the National Historical Commission, which only allows to name a public place after a person at least 10 years after their death. These guidelines took effect 20 years after the law renamed the Manila International Airport to the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. The Land Transportation Franchising Regulatory Board has given the green light to more than 1,000 public utility jeepneys to get back on Metro Manila's roads. Apart from this, 10 new jeepney routes were also opened in the capital region. There are now 178 routes open since Metro Manila was placed under the General Community Quarantine. More than 16,000 traditional jeepneys, meanwhile, are already plying the streets out of 74,000 traditional jeepneys in total, according to transport groups. In sports, Filipino pole vaulter EJ Obiena continues his Olympic build-up on the right track after winning gold in the World Athletics Continental Tour in Ostrava, Czech Republic. Obiena topped his best mark of the year at 5.74 meters to dominate the event. He beat French Olympic gold medalist Renaud Leven-Leny, who finished second, and defending world champion Sam Kendricks, who landed in third place. To further boost his preparation for the Tokyo Olympics, 24-year-old Obiena is looking to compete in Germany later this week, but is still waiting for confirmation. Shifting to a new normal entails the use of technology. Taguig City, for one, is making that stride through the use of a robotic nurse to go along with its advanced quarantine center. Along with other frontliners, Taguig's robo-nurse tends to patients and acts as a personal assistant to those currently receiving treatment. It can communicate through the use of a tablet. The city's health office says this is a way to limit medical workers' contact with infected individuals. RoboNurse is a project by students studying robotics in Taguig. The city has also constructed a resort-like quarantine center which can accommodate 500 persons in isolation. For this, the city made use of spacious container vans, which officials say is meant to make individuals feel more at home despite being on quarantine. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.